looking at decimals here, Math 3, 5.1 decimals. Let's take a look at what we tend to cover in this 5.1 section. We'll talk about naming decimals, writing decimals, converting decimals to fractions or mixed numbers, locating decimals on the number line, ordering decimals, rounding decimals. What are decimals? Well, best way I could describe decimals is that decimals are special fractions that where the denominator is just some multiple of 10. A decimal has a whole part and a fractional part together, an abbreviated way of writing a mixed fraction. So you can see here, numbers, just like before, numbers have names. There's a literal phrase attached to each number, numeric value: ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. And here we have the decimals, so just an abbreviated way of writing a fraction, where the denominator is just some multiple of 10. So one place past the decimal is a tenth, two places past the decimal is a hundredth, three places past the decimal is a thousandth. And here we have four places past the decimal is 1/10,000th. So in a decimal system here, each place value represents some power of 10. How many ones, how many tens, how many hundreds, how many tenths, how many hundredths, how many thousands of parts of a fraction here. So we're dealing with money. We have $5.03, but if you're looking at it as a decimal, we have 5 and 3 cents, 3 hundredths. We have 5 and 3 hundredths. So when you're dealing with a decimal, the and represents the decimal part of it here. And this one here, you have, so you can translate a numeric phrase into a literal phrase: 152 and 65 100ths. That's how you would translate it literally. So let's look at some other phrases here to translate. 15. So the part to the left of the decimal is the whole part. In this case, that is 15. The and is the decimal part. And then when you read the part after the decimal, we start reading from the last place out, which is in the hundredths place. So we read it as 15 and 68 hundredths. Notice the 8 is in the hundredths place. So you read this as 15 and 68 hundredths. So let's name some of these together. So here we have 4.3, or 4 and 3/10. So the part before the decimal is the whole part. For the decimal is the and the part that comes after the decimal is read according to the furthest placed out. So the 3 is in a tenth place. So we say 4 and 3/10. Next one here we have 2 and 45 hundredths. So the part before the decimal is the whole part. The decimal part is and we read it according to the furthest place out. 5 is in the hundredths place. So we have 2 and 45 hundredths. The last one this one here, there is no whole part, so we don't have an and. We just have the decimal part. So when we read it from the furthest place out. So we have the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths place. So we read it as 9 thousandths. 9 thousandths. Now reading this negative one here. Negative is in front, so the whole part of it is negative 15. The decimal part here. The decimal part here is read from the furthest place out, which is in the thousandths place. So we read that as 571 thousandths. So together we have a negative 15 and 571 thousandths. Now we're going to go back the other way and take literal phrases and translate them to numeric ones. So the first one we have here, so we have 6 and 17 hundredths. So the part before the decimal. So the whole part, that'll be 6, and the n is the decimal. So when we read this, we read it from the furthest place out. So we have 6 and is the decimal part. We read this from the furthest place out. So we have the tenths and the hundredths place. So we read this as 6 and 17 hundredths. Let's look at some more here. This one we have 14 and 37 hundredths. So the whole part is 14. Then we have and for the decimal. And we start reading from the furthest place out. 37 hundredths. So that says 14 and 37 hundredths. Let's do some more here. So this one doesn't have an and part. So we're going to have a decimal. And we're reading it from, it says 24 thousandths. So we start reading it from the thousands. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we backfill it, 24. Then we add a 0 place over here. So we have 24 thousandths. Now there's no difference between 5 and 5.0. 5 and 5.00. There's no difference between them. Same thing with the negatives. There's no difference between a negative 2 and a negative 2.0. They all say the same thing. They're equivalent. Now we look at converting here. As we said earlier, decimals are a way of writing fractions with the denominators a multiple of 10. So here we have 3/10. It's the same thing as, notice the 3 is in the hundredths place. So that's what's going to be in the denominator, 3 over 100. You have a mixed fraction here for $5.03. So the whole part is 5, and the fractional part is 3 over 100. Next thing they ask us to do is to go ahead and look at converting from a fraction to a decimal. So here we have 4 and 9 hundredths. So you're going to have 4, and notice the 9 is in the hundredths place. The 9 is in the hundredths place. So it's going to be 4 and 9 over 100. So as a fraction, it would be 4 and 9 hundredths. Let's look at another one. This one we have 3 and 7 tenths. Notice that 7 is in the tenths place, so the denominator is going to have a 10 in it. So we have 3 and 7 tenths. The last one here we have a negative, so we're going to have a negative fraction here. And notice the 6 is in the tenths, hundredths, the thousandths place. So the denominator is going to have 1,000 in the bottom. So it's going to be a negative 286 over 1,000. And since these are both even numbers, they simplify to a negative 143 over 500. Now let's look at locating decimals on a number line. So we have 4 tenths here. Notice this is scaled out to every tenth place. So starting from 0.0. Okay. So 4 tenths is going to be right there. Okay. Now that asks you to locate a negative 0.74. So it's scaled out. It's scaled out by tenths. So you have 0 here. It's a good idea to find out what the 0 is in the beginning, so you know where your left and to your right is going to be. So here we have 0, it's going down. So notice that it's the numbers of the digits are getting larger here. So where will a negative 0.74 be? Right about there. Now, ordering decimals. Now, when you order decimals, the easiest way I found is simply to put the decimals next to each other and compare the place values of each one. So if I have a 0.04 and I have a 0.40, I'm comparing the place values here and here until I find one that's larger. Then whatever one is larger, that's the largest number. So that's 0 and that's the same. So when I do this one here and here, that's 0 and that's 4, so that's larger, so that one's going to be larger there. Okay. So now they're converting these decimals into fractions. Notice the 1 is in the hundredths place, so they convert it to a fraction. So here in this case here, they have different denominators. They have different place values. So I have 0.31 and I have 0.308. So I'm going to add a 0 here. So now they have the same places. Now just compare. 3 and 3 is the same. Then compare 1 and 0. This one's larger. Yeah, I'm done. Now, two decimals are equivalent if they simplify to the same thing. Now, this one they want us to check the order the following decimals here. So for this one here, they have 0.64, and the other one is 0.6, and I'll add a 0 here so they have the same place. So when I start comparing, I notice that that's a 6. That's a 6 and they're the same. Look at the hundredths place and I see that that one's larger, so that fraction's larger. And the next one they have here is 0.83 and 0.803. So I add a 0 so they go to the same place. So I'm comparing. The tenths place, they're the same. Then I compare the hundredths place, and they're not the same. This one's larger. So that's how that goes. Now, when there are negative values here, the numbers that are close, when you deal with two negative numbers, the number that is closest to 0 is going to be the larger number. In this case here, a -2 is larger than a -3. A -2 is larger than a -3. I'll turn it like this. You can see that a -2 is larger than a -3. Now they look at rounding decimals. Okay. This one here, they ask us to round it to the nearest hundredth. The nearest hundredth place. So we have 18.379, and you want us to round to the nearest hundredth. So I'll underline my hundredths place. Then my check digit is going to be the place after that. That's my check digit. It'll tell me whether to round up or down. So I see that it's greater than 5, so I'll round up. So I'm going to have here 18. Now round up the nearest one. It's going to be 38. That's my nearest hundredth. See it there. And this simply means approximately. Now let's look at another one here. Now they ask us to round it to the nearest tenth, and then round it to the nearest whole number. So the nearest tenth, so underline my tenths place, and look at my check digit, it's one place after, and that tells me whether I'm going to round it up or down. So in this case it's 5 or greater, so I'll round it up. So when rounding to the nearest tenth, we're going to have 18. 37 is closer to 40. So we have an 18.4 rounded to the nearest tenth. Then they want us to round it to the nearest whole number. So I have 18.379. Gotta round it to the nearest whole number. So that's my whole number there. That's my check digit. So the nearest whole number is going to be 18. And that is the end of 5.1.